Hello, it's me, Brad, and welcome once again to one of my Music Humanities online video contents. Um, so, we're going to be talking about Beethoven now. We're moving out of the Viennese classical era. Mozart has died. Haydn is still teaching. Beethoven actually took lessons with him. But I want to show you something. This is the timeline I've constructed. And we've gone way back here from early medieval through medieval to Renaissance, Baroque, Viennese classical. And I'm just going to label this era right here Beethoven. From about 1790, he died in 1830 or so. He was just, I've waxed superlative about many of the composers that we talk about in this class, but Beethoven was just a singular, unique, sui generis guy. He took the lessons from Viennese classical sort of music and changed them and essentially founded the Romantic era. I mean, Goethe references Beethoven. He was the guy, not just with his music and his incredible creativity, but also in the life that he lived. And we'll be talking about that later. But right now, let me just give you a little bit of background information. So this is, of course, Ludwig van Beethoven. And he was born in 1770 in Bonn, Germany, and he lived to 1827. Okay, and Bonn was located up here in kind of the northern part of Germany. And he actually had heard of Haydn, and his father was a musician. Beethoven was a musician. His father had some serious drinking problems, and Beethoven kind of took care of the family while he was younger. But in his 20s, he got the opportunity to travel to Vienna, and he never came back. That's where he spent the rest of his life. Initially, he went as a performer. He was a gifted and talented pianist. Piano was now taking over from the harpsichord in terms of music technology. Let me write that down, okay? Piano, or as it was originally called, the piano forte, or soft loud, using the Italian terms, because it could play both soft and loud. It had the ability to, be expressive. The harpsichord was plucking the strings. The piano had hammers that hit the strings, and you could control the velocity of these hammers and create very, very subtle effects. And playing the piano was difficult, but Beethoven was a master. So he went to Vienna and basically then started composing and worked with Haydn. We divide his compositional work into three eras: the early Beethoven, the middle Beethoven, and the late Beethoven. And today we're going to be concentrating on just playing some music from his early and middle periods. And then next time we'll be talking a lot about his late work because it's just incredible. Yeah, he like I said, he started composing when he got to Vienna. It was another way to make money. He was the first guy that kind of lived, I wouldn't say off the grid, but he didn't really have a patron, a strong patron that he went to work in their court, like Haydn did with the Esterházys. He did have patrons, but it was always done as kind of a private transaction. He was one of the first musicians that just made his way because of the strength of his work and because people paid money to see him, to hear his music. Well, let's play some of this music. Okay, this is an early string quartet of Beethoven's, his first string quartet, as a matter of fact, string quartet number 1. You're going to see these things that say like Opus 18, okay? Opus 18. These were the way of numbering Beethoven's compositions, the same way that the Kirche guy did for Mozart. And the opus numbers only go up to about 130 or so. But don't be misled. A lot of times the opus will refer to a whole set of works, a whole set of maybe 6 string quartets. So even though he wasn't maybe as prodigious as Mozart or Josquin or Bach, he still cranked the music out. And the music he cranked was just unbelievable. Anyhow, let me play you this. This shows a lot of influence of the Viennese classical sort of era and the music that was being done by Haydn and by Mozart. Here we go. String quartet number 1, first movement. So this is an allegro, sonata allegro. So even though this has some of that binary form character of the question and answer, it doesn't really. It's more abstract in a way. It's more, the fragmenting of little phrases. It's like taking an idea and kind of twisting it and turning it and looking at it. Yeah, one of the things we haven't really done too much in these videos is talk about kind of the relationships that music sort of embodies. Man's relationship to God, man's relationship to his society, man's relationship to himself. Initially back in the early chanting days, man's relationship to God was, please don't smite me. And then it kind of evolved from there down through the medieval Renaissance was more like, hey, we're kind of having a good time here. We get along with each other. And then it became sort of a let's set out the rules through the Baroque era. Man's relationship to God was the clockmaker that lived off in the far, far remote stretches of the universe, and we kind of abided by those rules. Then in the Viennese classical, it all became about kind of this society, and your relationship to other people. Beethoven was about the individual. This was Beethoven. This was what he was internalizing and thinking. And when you hear this, you feel a part and parcel of that. You feel a kinship with this incredible intellect, this incredible musical genius. And it's a very different kind of music. Let me play you one of his early symphonies. This is his symphony number 1, as a matter of fact, Opus 21. He wrote these, he was in his probably late 20s at this point. So here we go. First movement, again, sonata allegro form. You don't need to know that, but here's what it sounds like. So, I mean, right off the bat, it's just nothing but a bunch of modulations to different keys. Beethoven, Mozart was doing this too, but Beethoven really began to stretch what was possible in terms of what made musical sense, and just took it and just ran with it. Yeah, the orchestra in Beethoven's hand is this organic thing. It's just evolving, it's going from place to place, and it's just amazing. You're at sea, even though this is early Beethoven, he's still under the sway of Haydn, where's theme A, where's theme B? It's really he's beginning to show that he is an intensely creative and innovative composer. But now, here we're going to play what he was known for. He he was, like I said, a gifted pianist, and he discovered he had to write a lot of his own music to show off his musical talents. So this is one of his fairly well-known piano sonatas. He wrote these things called piano sonatas, which are basically just solo piano pieces. Each one had 3 movements: a fast, a slow, and then a fast one, kind of like the old concerto grosso of Bach, the Brandenburg concertos. But this is just for a solo instrument, the piano. And I want to play you a beginning of this, and then talk a little bit about some of the musical things that he's kind of exploring here. It's called, and again, people gave these names. This is called his Sonata Pathétique. So it's just a glorious piece. And you're hearing Beethoven is using pretty crunchy harmonies. He's now taking advantage of the fact that you can modulate to all these different keys thanks to equal temperament from Bach and the Baroque era. And he's really expanding the repertoire of harmonies and sort of different keys you can go to that's possible. And in fact, you're hearing this, and it's given a name. We're calling it chromaticism. Chroma color, that means you're using all the colors. Basically, what's happening is that you have, two primary scales that we're using now, two primary keys. Again, this is, the demise of the modal system. We have the major scale, or the major mode. That's one scale. We have the minor mode, the minor scale. The chromatic scale is basically all of the notes that we have on the scale and on the piano. And basically that procedure where you generate the scales, it wraps back around after 12 notes. So the chromatic scale, instead of having 8 notes, the octave, like the major and the minor, has 12, and it sounds like this. And it's got all kinds of different harmonies there. You can go. And start really exploring different parts of, musical psychology. And that's what Beethoven is doing. And in fact, in this piece, this Sonata Pathétique, let me play you something right about here, okay? That was, in fact, a chromatic scale. He's just going down the chromatic scale. That's something composers hadn't done before, and Beethoven is weaving it into the fabric of his music. Okay? He did other things, though. I mean, it wasn't just, fooling with harmony and, kind of getting out there with some of the things that he does. He's completely overturning what musical form is about. And I'm going to play you a piece of his here. It's called his Moonlight Sonata. It's his Piano Sonata number 8 in C minor. And I'm going to play the first movement. Now remember, Beethoven would generally play this himself. He'd be doing it for, a dinner where they were paying him, or a concert where they were paying him, But yeah, the passion and the emotion behind this. Remember, the first movement is generally fast. Here's what you would hear if you went to a Beethoven concert and he played this piece. Just amazing. You can see why they called it the Moonlight Sonata. But through the whole thing, it's never leaving this feeling. Okay. Go towards the end even. It's just amazing. Beethoven is single-handedly redefining what music can be, what music can do, how music goes. This is just incredible. And what's amazing is that he had such a strong sense of melody and harmony. Even though in that one, the melody was just dan, da, dan, single note over and over again. It just works so well. I'm going to go back to the Pathetique Sonata and listen to the melody from the second movement that Beethoven writes. I mean, you just want to sing that, da 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 da. It's a perfect melody, and some of his later works, you're going to hear some amazing melodies. This didn't come easy for Beethoven, by the way. We have a record of him composing. He kept very, very copious notebooks. He would walk and write and walk and write things down. And you can see him struggling with these melodies until he gets it just right. And when it's right, it really hits. Now, he also, like I said, he was a gifted pianist and he could throw in the pyrotechnics when he wanted to. Just for fun, I'll play you the third movement from that Pathetique Sonata. Yeah, that's really tricky, and he's really showing off the capabilities of the piano too, and his modulations. He's just going to these randomly interesting keys, and they all make sense. It's quite something. Okay, just a little bit more about him. I mentioned that his father had a drinking problem. He had a difficult family life. It was his grandfather, for whom he is named, that really kind of helped him out and really set him on the path with his musical education. Again, both his father and grandfather were musicians. It was a very musical family. His father was not a very good musician, though. And Beethoven eventually kind of took control of the family. He looked after his niece. He looked after his nephew. His nephew joined him in Vienna. Beethoven saw to his education. Beethoven never married, and he had very strong sense of family, and the kind of the difficulties that he had with his own family probably informed his music to some degree. This passion that comes out. It's Beethoven struggling with his existence. I'll just end by playing a piece of his that's very, very well known that he actually wrote for his niece, and it's called Für Elise. Yeah. Anybody who's ever taken piano lessons has probably played this piece at some point. It's not particularly difficult, but it's such a nice piece too. Yeah, Beethoven. Yeah, he could really write them, and we're going to be talking a bit more about him in the future.